Winning play designer, Niki Smit. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for the intro.
I think I'm immediately intrigued by what you've crossed out there, using play to save the world? No, to save ourselves.
Yeah.
Tell me.
So that was my joke on all those TED Talks that have that narrative in there, like we're going to use this to save the world, we're going to use that to save the world. And something that we're more interested in is looking at the root. So taking an introspective look and seeing like, what can we, how can we empower ourselves? For which, of course, games, interactive media, and most importantly, play and being in a playful state is the most important tool.
Is it?
To empower yourself, yeah, for sure.
Being in a playful state?
Yeah. So to make a distinction there, for me, play and a game are something different. So a game is something with a rule set, where you have a set of rules, and within those set of rules you play a game. And that game most of the time has a win state or a lose state or goals. Whereas play is far more open. It's a kid jumping up and down in the leaves. It is two jazz players jamming with each other. It is flirting. It is being in the moment. It's being in contact with your body. And being from a half game design, half theater background, that state of being in a flow state, your body and mind connected, is very important.
And how can that save ourselves or maybe help to work towards solving social problems?
So, introspection is always a hard thing, and positive behavioral change is a hard thing to learn. And the most important and best way of learning we have as people is playing. Like evolutionary proved. Like there's a reason every mammal plays when they're young, because we come into this world and we don't know anything. And then we use play as this turbocharged learning mechanic to learn more about ourselves and what we can do. You know, climbing, roaring, whatever. We learn about the social space, play fighting with others, and we learn about the world around us. So using that state, which is innate in all of us, and switching that back to on again to get us in a state where we can learn by experiencing, we can then use that
Here we go.
as a way to teach people something new. And a good example of that is, and we won't watch the whole trailer, but just a little part of it.
Shall we just watch it and experience it for a little moment, all together?
Okay, so let's breathe together. We breathe in, and we breathe out. In, out. So this is a VR underwater game that is controlled by deep belly breathing. And as you can see, the whole world reacts to your breathing. So every time you breathe in, all the plants glow up, bloom up, and thus you get a visual feedback of your own internal system. And because we as people are very visual beings, that visual feedback and the embodied feedback, feeling that when you breathe in, you float up and you go forward, makes that a very effective way to internalize deep belly breathing. So we're not saying deep is a substitute for meditation, but it is a shortcut to internalize deep belly breathing exercises, which are a cornerstone of a lot of therapy, because deep belly breathing is basically the best emotion regulation technique that we have. It's basically like a volume dial for our emotions. So if you have an anxiety attack or you're angry or whatever, it takes roughly 3 breaths to get your heart rate in the same rhythm as your breathing. And because your heart rate circulates your blood, that gets another rhythm that goes to your other organs, etc.
So this is a really good starting point for various different maybe treatments or ways to connect with people that might need help in any particular way.
Yeah.
Yeah, beautiful.
And because the act of playing is literally also a meditative and a positive behavioral act, it draws you in deeper and deeper with every breath. So in the beginning it can be kind of hard because you need to learn this new way of breathing, and it can be awkward. But because playing is learning, at a certain point it clicks, most of the time far faster than it would be without VR, and it can get you into this more relaxed state. And it can be
you
used
feel it already, that you're in a more relaxed state? There's some nodding there. Yeah, that was really nice. Yeah. So how does a design process like this go about? How do you start, and where do you go from there?
We were really lucky with this one, and this one also kind of kicked it off for us, because we've been making embodied artistic experiences for a long time. We've existed for 14 years now, and we've always flirted with working together with scientists and working together with care. My colleague is from a clinical care background. But with this one, Professor Isabel Granick came to us and said, like, what you guys are doing is exactly what we need for children, because we need them to learn deep belly breathing for emotion regulation, but we can't teach them because it's really hard to teach them something internal when kids are very external.
Right.
So they came to us, and very early on, we had just such a good click in aligning our goals and them respecting the artistic process, and we also being curious enough and open enough to listen to them. And that became a 4-year process where game designers became science collaborators, and scientists became game designers. So
I love that. Yeah.
We went on retreats together, and they game designed with us. And yeah.
That's such an interesting cross process where you get to learn so much from each other and also put yourself in a different perspective in that sense, which I think is so helpful for these kinds of things. Yeah.
As a game designer, you want to know what the impact of your game is, and then suddenly having a scientist there that goes like, well, this happens in this field of psychology, but you could also do this. It's like,
wow,
amazing.
it's mind-blowing. Yeah. I'm sure you have other examples of these kinds of
because
techniques that you use.
We were lucky with this one because they came to us.
They came to you, yeah.
But at a certain point, we also want to set these things up ourselves, and then we have to look for people. So for basically since the start of VR, we've been busy with that embodied experience, with researching things that are about making you land in your body. And breath is a good example of that. Feeling your breath represented in game, in VR, makes your whole torso feel like it's part of that world. But other things like research into body language in VR, research into dancing in VR, all these kind of things we've been doing. And then at a certain point, I met my co-director, Sarah Tico from Hatsumi, and she was making a VR version of body mapping. And for people that don't know what body mapping is, it is a therapeutic technique where you lay on the ground, somebody draws a line around you, and then you're invited to draw your own emotions and where you feel them in your body. So it's kind of a creative therapy technique that is close to mindfulness. It's close to exploring, where do I feel my pain? Where do I feel my stress? Is it in my throat? Is it in my chest? Where do I feel my trauma? It's good for people with chronic pain, because chronic pain will never go away. So it's better to get to know it. And she was turning that into VR. And then she saw the stuff we were doing with embodiment, and she said, like, wouldn't it be great if we put my project of body painting and your project of embodiment together, and you could draw your own sadness and then dance with your own sadness. So that's
dance
what
with your own sadness.
Yeah, and there was like, oh, that's That's beautiful. So we started to make Soul Paint this experience where you step out of your body, then get invited to draw your own emotions in your body. And again, playing is learning. So the moment you see this virtual palette of all these weird, evocative, animated brushes, like things that pulsate inwards, pointy things, smoky things, wet things.
Can you show us?
Is it in? Let's see if it's still in there. This is a very early prototype. Let's see if this works. Because, yeah, we're still rudimentary now, so visually we're not there yet. But this is an example of it, where you're drawing all these pointy stuff. And while doing it, you actively start to think about, how do my emotions feel? Is it more pointy? Is it more this? Where do I feel it?
What color does it have?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then in the second phase, in the embodiment phase, we ask you to stop thinking, get out of your head, and land in your body. So that's more of this embodied physical ritual where you get to reintegrate these now finally visible emotions that have always been invisible. Integrate them and feel like they're yours. And then in the last step, with your consent, we ask you to upload your emotive artwork, this thing that you just made, give it a name, and upload it to our Museum of Emotions, where people get to show and present something that was previously impossible and very hard for us all to talk about, which is how we experience through our whole body our emotions. Yeah. So imagine this virtual empty museum, and you as a user go, I want to see all emotions around being in love. And the whole museum fills with all these user-generated artworks. Beautiful. And then for me as an artist, but also for scientists, the more of these artworks we collect, the more interesting it becomes, because everybody's different, but we all share the human experience. So where will we see patterns emerge? Yeah. And what things will be different culturally? Yeah.
There is so much to talk about, but I would like the audience to also have the opportunity to ask you some questions, because it's so interesting. And I really love the connection that you make between playing, which for many people just feels like something that's joyful and something connected with youth, till how you now create something that can actually help you get back into your body and heal, if you like. That's beautiful. Questions to Niki? Waving, walking up, introducing, asking. That's actually the drill, I'd say. Show of hands. Right at the back, I see one, and we may have time for you as well. Let's see if it's a long or a short question.
So finally made it. I have to walk all the way from there. Thank you for your presentation. It was very interesting. My name is Marco Roosendaal. I'm from TU Delft and also from Design United. And I have a question about your process. And you mentioned embodiment and this kind of situation where you externalize emotions. Mm-hmm. And you also mentioned theater. You started with that. So I was wondering, in your creative practice in VR and gamification, how do you use theater? Do you take on particular elements from that in your practice?
Oh, that's a fun question. So I think there's obvious parallels between the sort of stuff we make, which is about being in the moment, which theater is also a lot about. But I think the most theater influences that we have are in our creative process itself, because technology is a very slow and hard medium. If you have an artist intent, then you have to go through this whole wall of technology to get to the other side. So we're always mindful that we need to be able to create very quickly in a moment, like theater actors and directors can do on stage. You know, quickly try something new, put a chair here and act it out. And VR is very good for that. So we have all these, together with Joris Weidom from the HKU, we have this whole virtual online testing environment where we can, in a very theatric way, start to test things out. They go like, how about we do it like this? So we don't even have to build the whole game right away, but we can already role-play the game together, online, in VR, physically together, even though part of my team is in London, Dublin, Netherlands, whatever.
Very interesting, thank you.
Isn't it? And I'm sure there's lots more to tell, but hopefully you'll be here for a little while so people can ask you questions.
Yes.
Thank you so much, and all the best of luck with your amazing work. Niki Smit, thank you.